Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Naga Munchetty and Charlie State.
Our headlines today. Good morning, it's Friday the 10th of June. Our main story is the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will speak to her Ukrainian counterpart today to discuss the case of two British men who've been sentenced to death after being captured by Russian forces whilst fighting in Ukraine.
An unrecognised court in the rebel-held area of Donetsk found Arden Aislin and Sean Pinner along with a Moroccan man guilty of being mercenaries. Francis Reid has this report.
New video footage has been released of the riots at the Capitol building in Washington last year when supporters of Donald Trump stormed Congress as politicians met to certify Joe Biden's election victory.
The graphic images were shown in the first of several televised briefings by a Democratic-led committee after almost a year of investigations. Our Washington correspondent, Naomi Iqbal, has this report.
A coalition of charities is seeking an urgent injunction at the High Court this morning to try to stop the Home Office from sending asylum seekers to Rwanda from as early as next Tuesday.
Campaigners say more than 100 people have been earmarked for the first flight, including Afghan citizens who've recently arrived in the UK after fleeing the Taliban. Dominic Kassiani has this report.
The Chancellor has been accused of failing to act quickly enough to save £11 billion of taxpayers' money, which has been used to pay interest on the government's debt. Now, it's been 40 years since Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, or the Malvinas, as they're known in Spanish.
Nearly 1,000 soldiers were killed in the war. More than 600 were Argentinian. Many in Argentina regret the conflict, but maintain the islands are theirs. 4 decades on, there's still a real sense of loss. As our South America correspondent, Katie Watson, reports.
You come over for the Jubilee celebrations, celebrate the Queen and her 70 years reign, and then walk along, you see her grandson in the street.
It's quite something, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? What a picture to have. Seen anything inside?
So, a story that is always... Two things that are always of interest to people who work unusual shifts. It includes us, obviously, when you work very early, sleep and eating. So this is
Hold on.
The advice they're talking about now is that instead of what?
It depends on what time you get up. Surely. 11 o'clock can't be like a blanket time to have breakfast, because we get up, what, quarter to 4 in the morning?
No, but I think the point, that's absolutely right. But I think the point they're making is that if you lead more regular hours, then traditionally it says people often have their breakfast between 8 and 11. And what they're saying is instead of having breakfast then, push it back. So it's actually after you've got up, because I think a lot of people. You wake up, everyone has different patterns. A lot of people get up, have breakfast.
Yeah, couldn't do that.
So whatever time you are getting up, and that tends to be sometime, 8 o'clock or whatever, you eat as soon as you get up. But this is saying shouldn't eat until 11. And one of the reasons they say is more and more households, I don't know if this is true really, are sticking to a more continental style of eating. So you're having breakfast later and then eating your evening meal not until 9 p.m.
No, that wouldn't work for me.
Is what they say.
Well, they don't, it wouldn't work. Favourite cop car? From cop series, police series, from anywhere. Favourite car?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. Can you give me a bit of time on that one?
Well, the one that's won is Inspector Morse's. We solved things. OK, well, if that's kind of like, that's not the point.
I'm going to pitch in.
And the A-Team van, the big black van.
Again, they weren't detectives, were they?
They solved things.
I'm going to pitch in Frank Cannon, who is a big sort of hefty detective from the early 70s, American detective. And I can't remember what his car was, but it was significant. And he drove it all the time. Because he couldn't run, he couldn't chase anyone. All he ever did was drive, basically.
But the point is you have to know the car.
I know. I can't remember it. Sorry.
Time to get the news, travel and weather where you are. See you shortly. Hopefully.
Hello, you're watching Breakfast with Naga Munchetty and Charlie State.
Good morning to you. Coming up on the programme.
Let's see, time now is 6:38. Mike joins us to have a look at all the sports news. So, I don't play golf a lot, but I know it's a game, it's all about timing. Isn't it? It's all about timing. And yesterday, as this tournament started...
Yes, this is the golf tournament that's shaking the sport to its core. The row and the bitterness over this breakaway series of matches and tournaments has intensified, basically, because no sooner had the rebel players, teed off in this inaugural breakaway tournament, which is controversial because it's backed by Saudi Arabian money and the country's human rights record is deflecting the attention away from that. Now, as soon as they teed off, they were all banned from the PGA Tour. Not a great surprise. We were expecting some sort of move from the PGA Tour as punishment. Some actually had already resigned themselves from the tour. But yes, and looking at the skies this morning, I'd say it looks fair for the cricket.
What do you know?
What do I know? Nothing.
Let's speak to someone who does.
That's what I thought.
How about that?
When you tread on her toes, you know what...
Very much. We'll see you later on.
That's going to be lovely. But if you go down to the
Be
races,
perfect.
beautiful weather. 13 minutes to 7 is the time. A 17th century shipwreck has been uncovered off the Norfolk coast. It's being described as the most important maritime discovery since the raising of the Mary Rose.
The Gloucester sank 340 years ago while carrying the future King of England, James Stuart. But the ship's whereabouts were unknown until a team of divers unearthed it after a 4-year search. Joe Black has this report.
Now, after 37 years and almost 9,000 episodes, the residents of Ramsay Street are getting together for the final time. The filming of Neighbours is coming to an end today.
Probably see behind us some of the faces you may remember from the past. The Aussie soap launched the careers of a number of Hollywood actors and pop stars, including, of course, Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan. They are all returning for a final farewell being filmed today. Our entertainment correspondent Lizo Maziba has this report. Standout perm and mullet in that shot, weren't they?
To take you back.
Standout perm and mullet. Sounds like a comedy dude, doesn't it, perm and mullet? So have you got any thoughts about Neighbours ending? It's funny, we were having this conversation a moment ago about 9,000, was it 9,000 episodes of Neighbours there's been, which sounds like a lot. And you think, but there are other soaps that you may be more famous over here, Coronation Street, EastEnders and whatever. But there's not much difference, actually, because Neighbours was on 5 days a week.
5 days a week, yeah.
So it really added up the numbers.
Do you have a favourite Neighbours moment? Perhaps there was some there in Lizo's report, but perhaps there's just a moment or something it meant to you in life. Get in touch. We're going to be a bit nostalgic, a bit more a little later on in the programme. You can get in touch by email, bbcbreakfast@bbc.co.uk, and, of course, Twitter @bbcbreakfast.
Time now to get the news where you are.
That's the treatment. Yeah. This is about, these FSH levels are indicators, aren't they, of hormone levels, because one of the problems are when you enter the menopause is trying to match the feelings you had, the way your body worked as much as possible before entering the menopause. And so women are not being given the opportunity, perhaps through the NHS or their local GP, to kind of have that assessment, so it's an easier transition process.
Yeah, so there's two things there.
Dr Munchetty, the right of reply from the manufacturers of these testing kits, so they've told the BBC that the tests were not diagnostic or meant to replace medical advice. They say users should still speak with their doctor before taking any action on the result. So the manufacturer of the testing kits seem to be saying the same thing that you do, but they're filling what appears to be a gap, which is that for some reason women are saying, I'm not getting the help I need anywhere, or the advice or the consultation, so I'm going to do this, which is why the testing is happening.
The testing is not...
Personality of the Year, question of sport. She says she'll miss it terribly, but after 30 years, she says she just feels it's the right time. And she's worked with the best of the best. The current generation will know her as a brilliant broadcaster, the face of Wimbledon. But of course, a lot of us remember her brilliant playing days, reaching the semi-finals of Wimbledon back in the Jubilee year in 1977, Silver Jubilee.
I know things change. I know, people move on and, someone brilliant will take over, but it just will not feel like Wimbledon.
And lots of reaction, including, CBBC Dog, her biggest fan, Hacker the dog, who tweeted, Sue Barker, you're better than a permanent marker. Which I guess is dog humour. Strange tweet.
He compared her to a permanent marker.
I said better than a permanent marker. And someone else who's a big fan of Sue Barker.
How could you? I don't know anyone who's not a fan of Sue Barker.
Well, it is one of those things, isn't it? It's summer, it's Wimbledon, and Sue Barker's there. Carol, I mean, you've spent